You hear that? Basically, that's a sound being made every time my needle goes up and down, and that is not normal for my machine. So that's a sign that my machine needs a little cleaning. So I'm gonna pop out, this is my acrylic insert, and I just slide that over, and I'm gonna take my bobbin case apart and also unthread the machine completely. Whenever you start hearing bad noises, it's really not a good idea to keep quilting. You're gonna end up having bad stitches. You could potentially also break your machine. There could be something in here that's catching, that's causing a lot of problems. And look at all that lint, all this fluffy stuff. That's lint that's building up, and I could end up stitching that to the back of my quilt. And I can tell you that rubbing noise might have been my needle. It might have gotten slightly bent and was like rubbing up against something. It could be a thread in here caught somewhere. I just have to sit here and brush it out really good just to be able to see what's going on, and then to play around with rotating the hand wheel and see if I can figure out where exactly that noise is coming from. So when your machine does this kind of thing, it can feel kind of annoying, and there's a tendency to kind of ignore it and just keep quilting. And I can certainly understand that, but it's one of those things, we want our machine to be in top working order, and when we pay attention to these little sounds and quirks and nuances of our machine and respond by brushing it out and getting it a little cleaner and giving it a little bit of oil, then the machine's going to work that much better. So I'm just putting a drip of oil on the brush, and then I use that to brush out the machine so that not only am I catching more of the lint and fluffy stuff down here, at the same time, I'm also applying oil to the machine. So it's all good. And it's catching more of the small stuff. You can see that because the oil naturally grabs the small stuff. I really want to be clear about never, ever use can of air. You can oftentimes find it in computer supply stores. People say like, oh, use can of air to blow it out. You don't want to do that unless you have the ability to take off all of these plates, all of these covers on your machine. Otherwise, you are pushing all that lint further down deeper into your machine where it can really lock things up. I mean, you can shove it down in there and then you'll just basically create kind of oily layers of lint that that will lock up the works completely, and trying to get that fixed is really expensive, and if it's even possible. So don't use can of air on your machine. Always use a little brush it out. Vacuum cleaner can also work. I mean, one of those little mini vacuum cleaner attachments. I don't have one of those. I just don't have a vacuum cleaner handy usually when I'm out here. But anything that you can do to remove that lint other than can of air is a good idea. Now let's rotate the hand wheel and see if we're getting that rubbing noise again. Let's listen. There's no sound. It is right back to normal. If I put my foot down, smooth purr. That's the way I want the machine to sound. I'm going to put a drop of oil back here in the back on that bar that moves back and forth. I'm also going to put a drop on the hook, the rotary hook. Definitely check your manual to see where you're supposed to apply oil. This is just my habit. I also put a drop of oil above the needle bar where the needle attaches. And we're back to a nice purr. That's what I want to hear. Now I can put the machine back together again. This is another reason why I love my Bernina, my older Bernina machines. This is a Bernina 1230. And part of the reason why they're so awesome is you have such accessibility here. The ability to remove these plates and be able to get into the machine and work on it. That's really, really nice. I'm gonna add a new needle, and I like the Schmetz Universal 8012 needles. They're my favorite. I really think that more than likely what was rubbing, making that grinding noise, was probably just a bent needle. It was probably just slightly bent, and that was causing that noise. Whenever you add a new needle in, always make sure that it is fully seated up in the top of the machine, and then tighten that down real nice and tight to make sure it's not going anywhere. I've had this happen where a needle loosened up slowly and all of a sudden fell out of the machine, hit the needle bar, split in a million pieces, and scared the bejesus out of me. So you don't want to do that. Make sure the needle is inserted all the way and nice and tight, and then rethread your machine. So that's it for oiling and taking care of your machine. Try and get in the habit of doing this with every 2 to 3 bobbin changes, and you're going to be so much happier with how your machine runs.